week 9 of the fantasy football season. And here's a few wide receivers I would start this week. The first guy, Michael Pittman Jr. of the Indianapolis Colts. So Michael Pittman, the last few games here, he's coming into his own. And he's been putting up big fantasy days. Week 7 at San Francisco, 4 catches, 105 yards and a touchdown. And week 8 versus Tennessee, a huge game, 10 catches, 86 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Now this week he's got a great matchup versus the New York Jets in week 9 on Thursday Night Football. And right here, looks like T.Y. Hilton's going to be out with a concussion issue. And Michael Pittman, he's definitely got the trust of Carson Wentz and a big target in the red zone and a deep ball threat. This guy can run the routes. He can make all the big plays here. And this week versus a weak Jets secondary, I think he has another good ball game in this one and finds the end zone and possibly could get 100 yards as well. The next wide receiver I would start this week's Robert Woods of the Los Angeles Rams. So I know it's been pretty much all Cooper Kupp this season over there in Los Angeles. But Robert Woods, he's had a couple decent games as well over the last few weeks. Week 7 versus Detroit, 6 catches, 70 yards, and a 2-point conversion. And last week at Houston, 3 rush attempts, 22 yards with a rushing touchdown. And he added 3 catches for 35 yards and a touchdown. So right now they're using him as a good gadget guy as well over there in Los Angeles. And with Matthew Stafford instead of Jared Goff this season, this Ram offense is a day to night difference here with Stafford at the helm. And obviously this Ram team, they're primed and ready to try to win the Super Bowl this season at 7-1 on the season. So right here, they got a great matchup on paper on Sunday Night Football with the Tennessee Titans coming to town. And the Titans give up the most fantasy points to wide receivers this season. And once again, I think Robert Woods could get anywhere from 15 to 18 fantasy points. And he's definitely a wide receiver to start this week. The next wide receiver is Brandon Cooks of the Houston Texans. So Brandon Cooks, he's been making plays here for this Texan team. Garbage time or not this season. The last 2 out of 3 games, he's had big games. Week 6 at Indianapolis, 9 catches, 89 yards. Week 7 at the Cardinals, 5 catches, 21 yards. And last week versus the Rams in garbage time, 6 catches, 83 yards and a touchdown. So right here, week 9 at the Miami Dolphins. It's a great matchup on paper, no doubt about it for Cooks and this team. And this is possibly the 2 worst teams in the league going at it, both at 1-7 this season. So the Dolphins give up the second most fantasy points to wide receivers. And this definitely could be a mini shootout in this game. And I think Brandon Cooks in this one will find the end zone once again with 70 or 80 yards this week. The next wide receiver is Cole Beasley of the Buffalo Bills. So Cole Beasley, he's had another solid season this year with the Bills. In the last 2 games, he's taken advantage of very good matchups on paper. Week 6 at Tennessee, 7 catches, 88 yards and a touchdown. Week 8 versus Miami, 10 catches, 110 yards receiving. And week 9 at Jacksonville now, it's a great matchup on paper. They give up the 7th most fantasy points to wide receivers. And this Jacksonville team, they got no chance this week here versus Cole Beasley and the Buffalo Bills. And I think Beasley, he'll get some early points in this game before Buffalo just sits on the ball and kills the clock. So right here, Beasley, I think he could crack 100 yards in this one. And even if you don't, in PPR leagues, this guy's a guarantee for 7 or 8 catches in this one, or probably 70 or 80 yards. The final wide receiver I would start is Hollywood Brown of the Baltimore Ravens. So Hollywood Brown, he's having a great fantasy season this year. And he's a big deep ball threat for Lamar Jackson in this Raven offense, no doubt about it. And this year, he's put up huge games. The last few weeks before their bye week in week 8 here for Hollywood. Week 5 versus Indianapolis, 9 catches, 125 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Week 6 versus the Chargers, it was a down game, 4 catches, 35 yards. But week 7 versus Cincinnati, 5 catches, 80 yards, and a touchdown on a whopping 14 targets. So right here in week 9, he's got a great matchup versus the Minnesota Vikings that give up the 6th most fantasy points to wide receivers. And we just saw big games from CeeDee Lamb and Cedric Wilson in week 8 of the Dallas Cowboys with a backup quarterback at that as well. Obviously Cooper Rush. I think Hollywood Brown and this Raven offense, they get back on track after a bad blowout loss to the Cincinnati Bengals. And I think Brown in this one could crack 100 yards and find the end zone. So that's a few wide receivers I would start here in week 9 of the fantasy football season.